Today we are going to look at into applied drawing, and we are specifically going to look at construction of ellipses. And before we even go to the different methods of constructing ellipses, which I'll be able to give you, it's good that we be able to understand the parts of an ellipse. And there are different parts of an ellipse, as we will see in the next slide. An ellipse has a vertex, it has a focus, it has a directrix, and it has a major and a minor axis. It has a major and a minor axis, and we'll be able to see that from the next diagram. So let's see all those parts, where they are, how they look like. So I had said that an ellipse has several parts, and of importance, some of those parts include the major axis, which you can be able to see from this slide. It's denoted at the bottom, but actual location is, it runs from point A to point B. It runs from point A to point B. We also have something that we call the minor axis, and the minor axis runs from point C to point D. It's noted at the far right, as you can see. That is the minor axis. It runs from point C to point D. It's also worthy to note that there is another part that is called the directrix, and the directrix is perpendicular to the major axis, and in our diagram it is noted by D1, D, D1, D, or rather you can say D1, O, D. That's our directrix. And as I've said, I repeat again, it's worth noting that the directrix is perpendicular to the major axis. It's also worth noting that the directrix is parallel to the minor axis. It's parallel to the minor axis. It's also worthy to note that the major and the minor axis are perpendicular bisectors of each other. They are perpendicular bisectors of each other. They are perpendicular bisectors of each other, right? And then we have another part that is called the vertex, and as you can see, the vertex in our drawing is noted by the part A, and it's also be denoted by part B, because ellipses an ellipse has two vertex, and in our case one is at point A, the other one is at point B. The other important part of an ellipse is the focus. There is the focus, and in our case it is noted by the connotation F1 and the connotation of 2, because an ellipse also has two focus. That is, in our case, F1 and F2. Let's see these parts, what they really mean from our next slide. Let's look at what they really mean. So as you have seen in the diagram from the previous slides, it's good to note that the major axis is the longest distance which passes through the center and is at right angle with the directrix. So the longest distance which passes through the center of the ellipse is what we call the major axis, and as we have seen from the diagram, it is noted by the letters AB. We have talked about the minor axis, and it's the maximum distance which bisects the major axis at right angle. And it also worth noting that it is parallel to the directrix, and as we have seen from the diagram, it is runs from point C to point D. Then we have something that we have said is called the directrix. As you have seen, it's a straight line perpendicular to the major axis, and it's located beyond the vertex. It's located beyond the vertex, and it's perpendicular to the major axis. In our case, it is noted by D1 or D. Then we have the focus. This is the point where an arc drawn using a radius of half the major axis from the point C or D meets the major axis. Then we have the focal radii. As you have seen, it's the distance from point P on the curve to the focal point F1 and F2, and they are called the focal radii, as we have said. Sum of two equal focal radii is equal to the major axis. We have a term that I want to define, but before we do define that term, let's go and see what's the vertex. It is the end point of the major axis on the curve. It's the end point of the major axis on the curve. Then let's define what's the term eccentricity. And eccentricity is the ratio between the distance from the vertex to the focus, and the distance from the vertex to the directrix. From below there, you can be able to see a link where you can be able to see the construction and even the name of those parts of an ellipse, and you can be able to learn more concerning the same from that link that is down there. So thank you so much. Thank you for listening, and have a good afternoon.